Hi and welcome to Z Games. Recorded live at 4ZZZ Studios in Brisbane and broadcast nationally over the Community Radio Network, Z Games brings you the latest gaming news, reviews and interviews from across Australia and around the world.
Hello. You are listening to Z Games. This is Australia's first nationally broadcast gaming radio program. So for the next X amount of minutes, you'll be hearing all about video games. I hope that's okay. My name's Razor, and I'm joined, as usual, by my colleagues. Firstly, Mr. Jody Macgregor.
Hi, Ray.
And the lovely Ms. Candi Payne.
Thanks, Razor. Hi, everyone.
And we've got a pretty awesome show for you guys. We have two special guests in the studio, Dom and Chris from a local development studio called Ghostbox. So we'll be talking to them all about their game Dragon Season later on. And also Jody and Candi have been playing a little indie game called Freedom Fall.
Yeah, from a WA developer called Stirfire.
But before all of that, let's kick this episode off as usual with the week in gaming news headlines, if you will, Ms. Candi Payne.
Thank you, Reza. Microsoft has appointed Satya Nadella as its new CEO, only the third ever in its company's history. Nadella replaces Steve Ballmer as the leader of the technological giant and brings with him a background in engineering, a stark contrast to Ballmer's history in sales. Company founder Bill Gates will leave his position as chairman to become a technology advisor to Mr. Nadella.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to affect the Xbox division of Microsoft, but I think having an engineer in the top spot is definitely a better way to go.
Valve is in the process of testing Steam Music, an application designed to integrate a user's music collection with Steam. The program will allow players to listen to their own music while gaming instead of the game's score or soundtrack.
I sort of do this already, but I would appreciate having a step taken out of that so I don't have to actually alt-tab back and forth between my music player and, half the time crash whatever game I'm trying to play.
What about the poor video game composers, though?
Well, I listen to their music for, the first 20 or 30 hours, but after 40 hours of Skyrim, you want to change.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it'll depend on the game. The Able Gamers Foundation has awarded its Accessible Mainstream Game of the Year award to Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. The award recognises games that take extra measures to deliver a complete gaming experience to players who have a physical disability. Square Enix's online RPG was praised for being accessible to deaf, colourblind and one-handed gamers.
Excellent.
Good round of applause for that.
Well done.
Well done. A prankster has filed an application to the US Patents and Trademarks Office for a request of express abandonment with regards to several trademarks relating to the upcoming Watch Dogs game. Several gaming media outlets, including GameSpot, reported that the application had been filed by Ubisoft before it became apparent that it was the work of a prankster. The application form reportedly contained a forged signature of Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot.
GameSpot, what suckers. You're never going to hear this.
Yeah, I think this just verifies the fact that, signature is not a very secure method of protecting your stuff. I think here in Australia, we're changing the credit account, so you have to have a PIN instead of a signature if you want to use your credit card at restaurants or at retail outlets. I think that's a very good move.
Sam Houser, Dan Houser and Leslie Benzies of Rockstar Games will be inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences later this week. Induction to the AIAS Hall of Fame is reserved for video game creators who have been instrumental in the development of highly influential games and moving a particular genre forward.
Good for them.
Yay.
But I've never heard of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences before.
Haven't you?
No, who else is...
I don't know, it sounds pretty official.
No, it does sound official.
Don't take their award away from them. Let them have their moment.
Right, that's it for the news. Next up, we'll be talking to Dom and Chris from Ghostbox Studios. Yep, got that.
Nailed it.
I nailed it, baby. You're listening to Z Games, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next two guests. Their names are Dom and Chris, and they're from a studio called Ghostbox, based here in Brisbane. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for that.
Now, you guys just put out a game called Dragon Season. It's a very cute, endless runner in which you play a dragon who breathes fire and collects goodies.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. But before we talk about that, do you mind if I delve into your past and
Sure.
and inquire about how you guys formed the studio? Because there's only 4 of you guys in the studio, right?
Yeah, there's 4 now. We actually started off with 8 of us. We all graduated from the Queensland College of Art and got onto the NEAS program through the government, and then we spent a year 8 of us in this tiny little room, like sweating. It was basically a sweatshop, really. And so that was our first year of development.
Pool table.
Yeah, we literally were like working on pool tables and like kitchen tables and stuff. So yeah, that's how we started.
So what do you guys do out of the group of 4 of you? What are your roles?
We're both programmers. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and Dom also handles the producing role.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And then we have 2 other artists, Troy Duguid and Cameron Pike, and they're responsible for like the look of the game and the quality of all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And all the art assets involved, yeah.
So it must be a lot of work with just the 4 of you working on the game. Did you outsource anything for Dragon Season?
We bought the music
Yeah,
online.
mainly the music and the sound effects like that, yeah.
We're using, like, game development's come such a long way in terms of, like, there's so many things you don't have to do now. Like, we're using a game engine called Unity, which means that, like, we start probably, like, 6 months in development compared to where some would have been 5
absolutely.
years ago in terms of, like, the basics level that you start at. So,
Yeah, and it allows us to quickly try out gameplay ideas, so we can just have a bit of a brainstorming session, then that day basically try that idea and see how it feels, yeah.
And Dragon Season is your first game?
No, it's
No?
actually our third.
Ooh, I should do my research.
It's our first good one. So we released Ghostbox Double Combo, which was basically like our 2 university games, and then we released Gunner Runner as well last year. We released those totally independently, and then we got signed up to Right Pedal to make Dragon Season.
Were those mobile games as well?
They were, yeah, plenty of issues and like heaps of stuff we learnt, but yeah, that's what we made in the sweatshop.
Is mobile gaming, is that your chosen platform?
We got into it because it's like, for us, it was like the lowest barrier of entry, and especially because when we started, like, there weren't the big indie games. Well, there's fewer of the big indie games on Steam that there are now, so we were sort of looking at mobile at that time, like Fruit Ninja and those kind of games that were made by fairly small teams and were really successful. So that was sort of our main reason for getting into that in the first place.
Yeah, and there wasn't like Greenlight and all these other options indie developers have now on PC to easily access people, yeah.
So let's talk about Dragon Season. Can you tell us what it's about in your own words?
Yeah. Well, it's an endless runner, but the big thing we wanted to do was like bring our own sort of character and create something new with it. So it's got a couple of cool different mechanics, and it's got this like really crazy art style with these crazy characters, and like compared to like most games in the App Store, I'd say it's probably a fair bit weirder.
Yeah,
but,
it doesn't take itself seriously. It's very goofy.
Yeah.
Yep. So you play as a dragon, a young dragon, it seems, or?
Yeah, he's like a cute little dragon called Nook, and we also have our bad guy called King Jellyboo, who's like this big fat purple monstery thing. I don't know
He sounds horrible.
if
Jellyboo!
yeah. So he's like kidnapped your friends and like hid them up on clouds, so it's up to you to rescue them.
And your friends are like frogs and princesses and these fairy tale kind of...
The best character is the cow, who asks you he jumps on your back and then asks you to jump along the ground, hopping along, then rewards you for that.
Yeah.
I like the princess who gives you missions to burn stuff.
Yeah,
she's just like,
set
fire to everything.
Very
Yes.
aggressive, yeah.
Yeah. We tried to build a bit of character into each of them. Yeah.
I was about to ask if this was like kid friendly until you mentioned burning.
It's
Very dragon.
yeah. From just the look of it, it's pretty kid friendly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at the idea of having a dragon-based endless runner? Was it one of you guys' idea?
It started off. We had a mini game pack, so you could play mini games against your friends, and then one of the games out of that was a kind of a hang gliding game, and we decided that maybe mini games weren't a good idea, so we decided to take one of those ideas and push it forward and develop it further. So then we had this kind of hang gliding game where it's more about distance and momentum and stuff like that. Then we reskinned that since hang gliders aren't particularly interesting. so we had a bit of a brainstorming session to think, what can we theme this as?
Professional hang gliders are weeping. Right?
Yeah. No, it didn't look very interesting. It was an old guy underneath a triangle. It was not a good look.
Yeah, especially from the side on. You think a hang glider from the side isn't very.
It's just a flat. It's not interesting. Yeah.
One of the cool things I like about Dragon Season is that your dragon breathes fire. For me, that kind of it opens up like a lot of cool gameplay possibilities.
As opposed to what?
Not many dragons breathe fire.
Yeah. They not be spinning.
Well, I don't know,
Fire.
but was that always going to be a part of the game, or was that something that was added later?
No, definitely not. We originally, it was because we talked about it was the hang glider game. We made it a dragon. He didn't breathe fire for ages, and we kept like trying to play around with the different ways to make breathing fire fun without ruining the game. And it wasn't fun for so long, and that was like the number one thing people would tell us, like it has to breathe fire. And eventually we figured out like if you really restrict it and make it so it has to be really deliberate, then it is fun. So yeah, it definitely came late in the process, but as soon as it was there, it was like, oh, how do we not think of this? 6 months ago.
Yeah. For a long time, we were trying to keep it as a single touch game, so we tried all these weird ways of picking something up, and then he'd shoot a fireball a few seconds later. So trying to add fireballs and fire without adding a second button, but they were all just too complicated and just a bit ridiculous. So put a second button in, and everything's kind of okay. Nothing fell apart and caught fire, except for the stuff in the game.
Except the stuff that's supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
We are chatting with Dom and Chris from Ghostbox about their game Dragon Season. You're listening to Z Games. We're going to take a break and hear a tune now, but we'll be right back chatting with the guys. How long has Dragon Season been out for now?
It's been out since September last year on Android, and then we launched it on iPhone in December.
Can I ask if you have any figures or any numbers about how popular it's been?
So far we've got about 160,000 users and about 170,000 hours played, which is a bit ridiculous. About 19 years, yeah.
Wow.
19 years.
19 years of gameplay, which is not okay, really.
I was like, that's too much math for my brain. Just trying to try and
So
sort through.
you have sucked 19 years away from the human race's productivity.
They will never get it back.
Well done. Do you have any other interesting metrics there, Chris?
How many of those 19 years are on the toilet, though, honestly?
On the bus, yeah.
On the bus, on the train.
So just recently we passed 1 billion coins collected in game, which is, I think, it's pretty cool.
Yep.
Wow.
You don't get a lot in the game, so that's
Yeah.
pretty significant.
I have not been helping that very much at all. I have a few thousand.
Yeah.
Now, you guys got this game out with the help of Right Pedal Studios, who are a video game accelerator. They kind of provide mentorship and funding for young upstarts
That's right, yeah.
like yourselves. Can you tell us about your experience developing the game at Right Pedal?
Yeah, we when we first went in and pitched, we had absolutely done no preparation. They sort of looked at us blankly and told us to come back in a few weeks. But eventually we got it all going, and then we had this the really big turning point in the whole game was we got to work with Dan Vogt, who was one of the founders at Heartbreak and is doing his own stuff now. But he just tutored us in game development, and it was just one of the invaluable experience.
He's a very clever dude, yeah.
Yeah, he's just
Very clever.
He really just turned the game from being pretty mediocre to being something pretty unique. So that was awesome. Yeah.
What did you learn on this Dragon Season project, or are still learning?
Well, the big thing I think for us was just having a really solid idea about what the game should be when it's finished. And I think for me as well, it's really important to think about the game as everyone else will see it, which is compared to every other game on the App Store. So if you're just focusing on your thing, it's kind of easier to think that you know what the solution is. But I think it's important to think about it in a broader sense as well.
And even though, because they're a larger publisher, so monetization is something that's pretty important. And for most indie groups, they don't usually think about how they're actually going to make money out of it. And that was good having them there to, discuss what works and what we could try to, increase that. Yeah.
So Dragon Season is free, right? But you've got a microtransaction system in there. Did you ever consider any other payment options?
We actually tried to launch it as a paid game, but I mean, especially as an indie, it's so hard to get people to play a game. And there's the numbers of downloads between free and paid is thousands to one. It's just you just can't really compare them. So yeah, we knew we didn't have really choice. Especially on Android as well. The piracy is such a major issue that if you have a paid game on Android, nobody will play it. So
before the game was even released, we had 60,000 pirated users in China, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, it was at one point about 99% of our user base was pirates. Yeah, it was a bit interesting.
Wow. Last week we had Anthony and Meg from Screwtape Studios on the show, and they also got their game funded through Right Pedal.
They were talking about what it was like to work in the River City labs. Was it a better experience than being in a sweatbox?
It's a fantastic place to work.
Really?
There's a lot of really clever people. So if you've got any problem, there's always somebody that has done it before and is basically an expert at it. And just working next to them, sharing code, sharing hints and stuff like that, really, really useful.
Yep. They said that marketing their game was a huge deal, and that was really hard. How did you guys get around that hurdle to, break through the 100K barrier?
The secret is get featured by Google. That's the only difference between us and them. We just got lucky, and it took us that far. Because there's really no way, unless you're a big publisher and you can afford to spend thousands of dollars getting people to play your game, there's not a lot of options now. I mean,
there's occasionally games that randomly almost get picked up, like Flappy Bird, if you've played it.
Yes.
kind of ridiculous game.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think
It's a terrible game. Don't play
it's a
it.
game you
And
could probably
don't beat
make
me
it in
at
like 5 hours, not even that, 5 minutes. And I don't think they had any marketing, but for some reason that's at the top now, and he's making how much? Yeah,
Yeah, it's just word of mouth. Like,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
goes on
and
Twitter to
it's-
say,
there's
like,
a lot
this
of
game
luck
is
involved with that,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Stop playing it.
yeah.
So how did you get chosen by Google? Is it just some guy at Google says, hey, this is a good game, let's chuck it up? Is that the process?
John Passfield, who he's been in the games industry for forever, I think, and he just happened to somehow know a guy at Google. That's and I have actually no idea. I don't know why I've never asked him like, how do you know it? But anyway, so he sent a guy an email, and the guy sent an email back being like, oh, I've referred it through to our like featuring crew, and then we got an email back being like,
fix this stuff. Your
yeah.
back button doesn't work because it's an iPhone game, so we didn't have support for just Android stock stuff like back button. So we just put all that in there, fix up some stuff that they wanted, and
The man knows everyone.
he really does.
He does.
We're joined in the studio by two guests from Ghostbox Studios, Dom and Chris, who are talking about their game Dragon Season. We've talked about the Dragon half of that, but the season half of that name is also pretty important because the game, is it 15 minutes? The season changes and the whole look of the game changes. Where did that idea come from?
Troy and Cam, who are our artists, they had did a whole bunch of concept sketches for how the game should look. And then doing that, they did a whole bunch of color palettes. And we realized, why don't we just have all of them? So basically, the game changes season every 15 minutes. So we have different characters, and we have snowfall and autumn leaves and all that sort of stuff. So I think it kind of builds a bit more kind of progression into the game, and hopefully it also gives you a reason to come back 15 minutes and see what the game's going to look like. So
it helps break up the repetition because it's an endless runner. There's only so much you can see when you're running endlessly. So it just adds a bit of a break up every now and then.
You can set fire to different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like snow trees or normal trees.
Or autumn leaves or regular leaves.
Purely because it's been in the news recently, with Apple having to refund money and things like that for unintentional transactions. How do your transactions stop the gameplay at any point? Do you get to running and then you just can't run anymore unless you buy some tails or
no, we
like
definitely
that?
avoided all that kind of stuff. So it's if you played generally endless runners Jetpack Joyride and Skis Fire and stuff like that. It's they do it. We do it the same way as them, where it's just upgrades and boosts and stuff like that. So we never tell you can't play anymore.
If this game brings you the success that we hope it does, would you work on a sequel to Dragon Season, or do you have another game in the pipeline that you'd rather work on?
We don't have a game in the pipeline of them. I think definitely we just want to keep growing Dragon Season. Most of these big mobile games, you see once they get big, they just grow and grow and grow. So we definitely love to just add more costumes and more characters and more progression would be awesome. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So is it possible at the end of the game to actually catch King Jellyboo? Will I ever get that sucker?
It's a secret. It's a secret. We'll leave that. You have to find it.
Just keep floating around space, man. You'll get there.
Guys, thank you very much for joining us
Thanks for
today
having
on
us,
Z Games. Now, Dragon Season is available on iOS and Android, and it's free. So make sure you check it out. It's a really awesome endless runner with a dragon that can burn stuff down. And the season change as well.
Yeah, that too.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again,
Thank
and
you.
best of luck for the success of Dragon Season. We've got our fingers crossed. Hope it does really well.
You are listening to Z Games, heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network.
Now, you're listening to Z Games. My name's Razor. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Candi Payne and Jody Macgregor.
We're esteemed today.
Very esteemed.
Oh, we've stepped up a notch.
Yes. They've been playing a little indie game from a Perth studio called Stirfire, and the game is called Freedom Fall. It's out for PC, you can play it on your computer, or you can play it for your mobile device. Guys, would you like to tell me about it?
Sure. Freedom Fall is a 2D platformer. It's a jumpy game with a lot of jumping, but instead of being the kind of game where you run from left to right, you're escaping from a tower full of death traps. So it's going from the top of the tower to the bottom. There's a lot of falling. Normally in platformers, falling is a bad idea. It's what you don't want to do. But in this, rather than leaping over gaps, a lot of the time you're leaping into these gaps, into the unknown, and then trying to dodge spikes and spinning pendulums and balloons with spikes on them as you're falling down the tower.
Electric shocks, water,
Oh
sharks.
yeah, acid, bad
you
stuff.
name it, death, it's in it. Pretty
so
much.
Normally when you drop in platform games, you can't really see what's down below. Is this a problem that comes up?
Well, there are a few ways you can mitigate that. You can slow yourself by sliding along the walls and then sort of bouncing over to the opposite side when spikes appear on one side. And there are power-ups you can buy. You collect gears as you're exploring and spend them on things like a parachute that can slow your fall and wings that give you like a little double jump maneuver you can do. And if you save up enough, you can eventually get like a hoverboard thing, basically.
Have you got that?
I only just got that after like 3 hours of playing, but I'm
Damn.
at the point where it's so hard I can't use it. They just die immediately.
Oh, that sucks.
What's the character's motivation for all of this falling business?
The backstory is kind of interesting because the person who has built this tower full of death traps is a princess. Instead of being in a tower trying to rescue a princess, you're trying to escape from her.
Yeah. She's a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy? What sort of things does she do
Like,
to...
Crazy, like she leaves really unpleasant little notes on the wall about the last few people. Like so imagine you're in a castle, you're falling down against a brick wall and you see some chalk drawings with big arrows pointing to some skulls on the ground. That's always a really pleasant reminder that, you know, the last people that tried to escape her have died. And so that's kind of... she's a little crazy like that. She lets you know that things are coming, but she's quite gleeful about the fact that you are about to receive electric shocks or burn to death or be eaten by a giant shark. Those sorts of things. She's a little twisted.
Very, yeah.
I quite like her.
Yeah, no, the messages she leaves behind are often really funny.
Yeah.
And they're all written in like this childish scrawl in pink chalk with like hearts and sparkles, but they're all like about how this spike totally just killed a guy and a big arrow pointing towards this thing covered in like rusty blood.
I made a friend once and then I fed him to a shark.
So it sounds
That's
like
great.
the game kind of has like a sick, twisted sense of humor.
One could say that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
It's
One should say that.
It reminded me of Portal. It's like being taunted by GLaDOS, only if she was, 10 years old and obsessed with unicorns.
Yeah, and dying.
Yeah.
So not really like it. No, but similar.
Is this a meaty game? Is there a lot to it? Or is it more of a shorter game?
I feel like Jody and I have hit difficulty levels at different points because Jody's playing on computer, I'm playing it on my little phone. And so I think it got difficult for me quite early on, also because I'm using very different controls. So there is a lot to it for me because I find it so good that I get frustrated and want to keep going. So I consider that to be a meaty game where I don't just get frustrated and turn it off. I get frustrated but have to get to the next level, if that makes sense. So that's how I rate my meatiness. But I think Jody's made it a lot further through the game because bigger screen, better controls, I think, on a computer.
Yeah, I plugged in the Xbox controller and found it much easier with that than with the mouse and keyboard. And then I just sort of made it through in under 2 hours and I'd finished it. And I wasn't super inspired to go back, so I didn't find it. The ending is very hard, but it's not hard because the challenges get harder. It's harder because at a certain point your save points stop working. Like every second save point you arrive at is like ruined. These little candles that you light as you go that form your save points. At a certain point in the story, the princess realizes that you've got save points and she starts going around wrecking them, which is an interesting idea, but it actually makes a really frustrating game where you're just constantly having to repeat stuff that you've already done because it's so far between these checkpoints and you have to do like the easy stuff over and over again because there's one hard bit that you can't get past. And that, like you were saying, that this hadn't made you just want to quit the game. Like
I haven't hit that point though. That's why.
That really did make me want to quit the game. It was quite a slog to get through.
Yeah, save points are a big thing for me. I find that's what stops me in a lot of games is if the points in between, the markers is too far apart, then I will just forget it.
Yeah.
But I haven't hit that part yet, so that's probably why.
Yeah, at the start of the game, they're placed quite well. They're usually in pretty good
close.
spots, and and they're quite close together, so you don't get frustrated by how hard some of the death traps are. You just try them a few times and eventually you make it past. I think it's a really terrible idea to actually mess with things like save points that are there to help the player by treating them as like an in-universe thing that the villains can mess with. I think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah. We are talking about Freedom Fall, and that is available for which platforms, guys?
Well, I've got it on phone, so mobile devices.
So your Apple Apple phone.
I've got it on my Apple phone.
It's on Android as well.
It's on the
You can get it on
Android.
Google
PC.
Play. It's like $3. Did you pay about $3 for it?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
PC, they say Mac, but I couldn't play it on my Mac. So
there's no native Mac support.
no.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Oh.
Yes, so that's Freedom Fall. And that will bring us to the conclusion of this episode of Z Games, guys. As usual, thank you very much for joining us. Just before we go, we'd like to point you guys online to our various internet facilities.
Yep, we're on the Facebook facilities and the Twitter facilities.
And the iTunes.
Yeah, so if you just type in Z Games or Z Games AU, there's a pretty good chance you'll find it.
We're at Facebook and Twitter at /ZGamesAU.
Yep. So we'll be back next week at the same time. Catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This has been Z Games, recorded live in Brisbane on 4ZZZ and heard nationally thanks to the Community Radio Network. For more information on the show and to join the Z Games community, head to our website, zgamesau.net, that's spelt Z-E-D, or send us an email at contact@zgamesau.net. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Z Games is produced with the assistance of the Community Broadcasting Foundation.